We got joining us right now David Corn and Howard Fineman. They're joining us right tonight. And I have to ask you, gentlemen, about this whole question. It looks like the Tea Party is raising money. Not the Tea Party. The Occupy Wall Street is raising money, I was about to say. $300,000. They're having huge rallies. The labor movement's joining up with them, especially the public employees sector, the teachers. I want to go with you, David Corn, to start with it. Is this possibly the great marriage of the left and center left they've been waiting for?
Well, we have been waiting for this for a long time. I think Occupy Wall Street is kind of at a fork in the road, and their decision has to be made, and there's no one single person or one single group that can make the decision, whether it's going to go to a more organized movement with targeted strategies and goals and eventually demands, or whether it will remain more amorphous and voicing dissent and voicing anger and resentment and the like. And right now, it's unclear which way it's going to go. It's really up to the people in doing the occupying, and you have the unions trying to come in with money and with organizing skill and trying to shape and be a partner. Whether this marriage takes or not, we won't know probably for weeks, if not months.
Well, Howard, the Occupy Wall Street movement is spreading around the country now, and it's going international. Look at these two maps. The first one shows the cities in the U.S. that have seen their own demonstrations since September. It's spread out west and down south, all across the country. Now, here's a surprising one. This second map shows cities across the globe where demonstrators took to the streets this weekend. Protesters came out in Canada, over in Europe, and in parts of Asia, including India. Howard, it's amazing to see. It's almost like you're hearing the Internationale all of a sudden. I mean, not to disparage this effort, but the left hasn't been this united over time, if you think about it.
Well, the mechanics are available to unite everybody, and it's called the Internet, and it's called Facebook and Twitter, et cetera. Social media aren't just limited to the United States. They're instantly and totally global. But out here in Chicago, where I am, Chris, and where I just came from the Obama campaign headquarters here in downtown Chicago, they're watching it very carefully and with great interest. The people at the Obama campaign say that they like it so far because it gives their side something to get enthusiastic about, that rather than sort of standing around criticizing Barack Obama by name, these people are out in the street and trying to send a message. And I think at least so far, the Obama people think that it dovetails to the extent that Occupy Wall Street's about anything. It's about jobs, and that's the theme that Barack Obama was hitting relentlessly down in North Carolina today.
Well, let's watch the president yesterday, Howard. I think you got a point there. Here's this weekend, the president speaking at the Dr. Martin Luther King formal dedication here in Washington, or rather in Washington. He alluded to the movements in the streets. Here he is, I think, trying to tie in to the strong sentiment against Wall Street. Here's what he said.
Those with power and privilege will often decry any call for change as divisive. They'll say any challenge to the existing arrangements are unwise and destabilizing. Dr. King understood that peace without justice was no peace at all. If he were alive today, I believe he would remind us that the unemployed worker can rightly challenge the excesses of Wall Street without demonizing all who work there.
This is going to call for some real leadership by the president, David. And Howard, he's going to have to find a way to distill from the movement in the streets the right cause for him, something he believes in, whether it's equality of taxes, some removal, let's face it, of the capital gains tax. He doesn't want to say it, but that's what he's talking about, getting rid of that 15% tax rate on money made off money as opposed to 35% tax rate made off money for people who work. He has to find some way to energize that effort, at the same time not get involved or blamed for if this thing breaks bad. Right, David?
Now, the president has been walking a delicate balance since the very beginning, since even before he became president, and he signed on with the TARP bailout back in September 2008, about whether he was going to be populistic and bash Wall Street and try to exploit or capitalize or lead on the anger out there against Wall Street, or whether he was going to try to get Wall Street on his side. And and the business community has been very tough on him, despite the fact that he saved their backsides. And so he hasn't really come down on one side side or the other on this, which may be a president's job to try to straddle that line. But as this movement grows, if it does grow, and the target becomes Wall Street and Wall Street greed, it may be harder for him to finesse this point. And he may not want to going into the next election. He may want to be more populist because actually, look, trying to be kind to business, trying to, not bash them too much has not gotten him much from business itself. They've been very mad at him.
Yeah.
Jamie Dimon had a very public break with him, the head of J.P. Morgan Chase. And so he hasn't gotten a lot out of the business community for trying to be a good guy. And still, he's been up against the Republicans on Wall Street reform. This may force him, if this movement expands, to come down harder on one side than the other.
Howard.
Yeah. Well, I think that he will try to still straddle, and I don't think he's going to become a wholehearted Wall Street basher, even if that's what the people at the Obama campaign think the Occupy Wall Street movement ends up being about. I think they would like to use the energy of the Occupy Wall Street movement to focus on the jobs message, on the notion that President Obama is the guy who proposed a jobs plan with many pieces that in the past Republicans have supported, and that all he's asking for is that Congress pass that jobs bill, because the Obama White House has been on that message for the last 2 or 3 weeks. They think that it's been working. They look at recent polls that show some bump up in numbers for the Democrats and so forth. Also, the Obama campaign's been out advertising heavily in a lot of swing states and to push his numbers up a little bit. I think they'd much rather try to let the Occupy Wall Street energize the base, but not get dragged off into a pure confrontation with Wall Street. First of all, President Obama is not like that. Secondly, even if Jamie Dimon and a lot of the others don't support him, I don't think that the president, especially who's trying to win states like North Carolina and Virginia,
I agree with you.
is going to want to be that old-timey sort of northeastern Franklin Roosevelt bash Wall Street kind of guy. I don't think that's who he is.
I'm glad you said it, Howard, because I was thinking that the fact is if he's going for those people that make over six figures, those high-tech people down in the Research Triangle and out in Colorado, a place like that, he better not bash money. But here's where I think he has an advantage.
But there is a difference, Chris, between bashing money and people who work hard for it and bashing what's gone on Wall Street over the past few years and how that was tied into our economic problems.
Yeah.
Well, here's an example. I was going to say this. Here he is. He doesn't have to do the bashing because I think Romney does his own self-bashing.
Oh, yeah.
Take a look at this picture. It's right out of Bonfire of the Vanities. Here's Mitt Romney bragging, stuffing money in his pocket. Look at all these people from Bain Capital. It's right out of Bonfire of the Vanities. Masters of the universe are obnoxious, all of them. The joke picture taken after an official company brochure photo was snapped shows Romney and the other cogs literally stuffing money into their clothes. It was uncovered by the Boston Globe 3 years ago. It seems to me, David, that this is something where he self-immolates here. Here's a guy who is as much a part of Wall Street as Michael Douglas is part of Hollywood. You can't take him away from it. You can't repot this guy. He is money. He's Bain Capital. Could Obama, the president, benefit by the fact that the guy we're looking at right now is so much a target of what the little people, if you will, down on Wall Street, looking up at those buildings, don't like?
I think in a lot of countries that would be a game killer for Mitt Romney, a picture like that. Now, this is a key issue. I think what the people in Occupy Wall Street are expressing is a sentiment that's held widely across the country. You don't have to be part of a drum circle to wonder about the difference between the top 1% and the bottom 99% and to think that you've been shafted while they got saved. And the question that's going to happen, and I think this plays into what Howard was talking about in the campaign, is whether that discontentment and that dissent that's being raised is identified with by people in mainstream America, because there's a cultural component to this protest. There's also a political, ideological component. And people may look at these people and say, that's not me, and they don't want to be part of it. But if they hear what they're saying and they share that anger, which I think people do fundamentally, then someone like Mitt Romney is going to be in a really difficult position.
So well said, Howard. You and I grew up middle class, I believe it's fair to say. And my father, who was a lifelong Republican, said the one weakness of the party he voted for was they were in bed with big business and money. And he would talk about the bad old days of the GE price fixing. And he would say, these are guys who have betrayed the free enterprise system. These are the guys who have manipulated it. And that's the one embarrassment he had about the Republican Party. Can this president have the skill to separate that middle, like my dad, from the wealthy cheaters, basically, who they see as having manipulated the system. We're going to talk about it later with Kevin Spacey. By the way, this movie, Margin Call, is all about the cheaters.
The way to do that, Chris, is the way that the people who ran against Mitt Romney on behalf of Senator Ted Kennedy did it years ago when Romney was challenging Ted Kennedy for that Senate seat. They went out to Indiana. The Teddy people went out to Indiana, found a plant that had been shuttered by Bain Capital as part of a takeover and makeover.
A chop shop.
And they launched a caravan of unemployed people that went all the way from Indiana to Boston. Lights out for Mitt Romney. You have to do it that way. You can't do it like resenting the guy who looks like the guy on the Monopoly card. That's a caricature. That won't work. That won't work.
Thank you. Was Shrum involved in that? I think Bob Shrum had his fingerprints all over that baby. He'll be thanking me, by the way, for saying so. Anyway, we're all talking about how you sharpen the knife going after the ancien regime here on Hardball. Thank you, Howard Fineman. Thank you. That was a Dickensian reference. Anyway, thank you, David Corn.